17 years is a lifetime when you spend it in the same place, walking the same halls, greeting the same faces, and giving every ounce of effort to something you believe in. The early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices made quietly while chasing deadlines and fixing problems that no one else would touch. Every achievement felt personal, every success a shared victory. But when it all ended, it didn't end with gratitude or a handshake of respect. It ended with a piece of paper and a few cold words that shattered everything that had been built over nearly 2 decades. There were no warnings, no second chances, just an abrupt decision that felt rehearsed, as if it had been planned long before the final conversation took place. 17 years of loyalty and hard work reduced to a number on a payroll sheet. The weight of that realization hit harder than the firing itself because it exposed a truth long ignored. Loyalty in the workplace only exists until it costs too much. That day felt like time had frozen. The same people who used to depend on every decision and relied on steady leadership suddenly looked away, avoiding eye contact. Pretending they didn't know. The office walls that once felt alive now echoed with silence. All the years of service, the birthdays spent at the desk, the holidays skipped for the sake of deadlines, the problems solved in moments of crisis. None of it mattered when money entered the equation. The company that once promised growth, respect, and a lifelong partnership revealed its real face. It was never about loyalty, it was about numbers. Numbers that could be replaced, cut, or shifted for a better bottom line. The realization was bitter, but it opened a deeper understanding of how easily devotion is mistaken for security. The company's gratitude had always been wrapped in words like, "We're family," and "We couldn't do this without you." Those words once meant something. They made it easier to stay late, to work through exhaustion, to believe that all the effort had purpose. But when the meeting came, those same words felt hollow. The people who once called someone their backbone were now calling them a burden. The phrase, "You make too much money," carried a sting far deeper than it sounded. It wasn't just a justification, it was an accusation that success had somehow become a threat. It meant that all the years of earning trust, promotions, and recognition had reached a point where appreciation turned into resentment. The value once celebrated had become a cost to eliminate. That shift from praise to dismissal revealed how fragile stability truly is. It taught that no matter how long one stays, how much one gives, or how deeply one believes in loyalty, in the end, the system only sees figures. The heartbreak wasn't in losing the job. It was in realizing how easily devotion could be erased by a single financial decision. There was a time when working long hours felt like a badge of honor, a symbol of dedication and pride. Every project completed, every crisis managed, and every late night email answered built a quiet sense of accomplishment. The work wasn't just a job, it was a commitment. It felt good to be needed, to be trusted with the hard task no one else wanted to handle. Every success became proof that loyalty and effort still mattered. No one ever complained about the extra hours spent fixing what others broke, or the weekends sacrificed to keep the company running smoothly. But suddenly, the very thing that once made a person valuable became the reason they were let go. They said it wasn't personal, that the numbers didn't add up, that someone was making too much money. Yet behind that excuse was the harsh truth. Dedication was only useful until it became expensive. It was a strange kind of betrayal, one that crept in quietly over time. When someone spends years building trust, they start believing it's mutual. They assume their effort is seen, that their consistency earns protection. But the day came when the same management that once praised loyalty now treated it like a liability. It wasn't about performance or commitment anymore. It was about cost. The realization hit hard. Years of being dependable didn't mean being irreplaceable. The company's gratitude had an expiration date, and once it arrived, every compliment, every raise, and every handshake suddenly felt like part of a transaction rather than appreciation. The most painful part wasn't the firing itself, but what came after. The people once mentored, trained, and guided with patience were now sitting in the very office that used to be familiar territory. They had once asked for advice, leaned on experience, and looked up for direction. Now they filled the empty chair without hesitation, as if the person who helped them get there had never existed. Watching them settle into that position was a quiet kind of heartbreak. not because they didn't deserve it, but because it showed how quickly memories fade when power shifts. Loyalty had been replaced with convenience, and respect had been replaced with silence. Seeing those once new employees step into leadership was like watching years of effort evaporate into thin air. They carried forward the same systems, the same lessons, and the same strategies that had been taught to them, yet no one remembered the hands that bent them. The office buzzed with a new kind of energy. It's one that celebrated fresh starts and modern thinking, but deep down, it was just a cheaper version of the same foundation. The hardest truth to accept was that hard work had not been enough to protect anything. Dedication could build a company's success, but couldn't guarantee personal security. In the end, the ones who built the walls were often the first to be pushed out of them. It's a strange feeling when everything once admired becomes the reason to be replaced. Years of experience, leadership, and steady performance had once made someone invaluable. But now those same qualities were described as outdated or too expensive. The dedication that used to draw respect had quietly turned into a mark of inconvenience. When someone works for years, they expect to be rewarded for their skill and loyalty, not punished for the cost of their experience. But in the corporate world, loyalty only holds value until a cheaper alternative appears. The replacements were younger, less experienced, and far easier to control. They didn't question decisions, didn't demand fair pay, and didn't carry the history that made them stand tall. Replacing one person with 3 new hires wasn't a loss to the company. It was a strategic adjustment. That's how the decision was framed, as if it were just a line item on a budget sheet, not the dismantling of someone's life's work. What cut deepest wasn't the loss of a title or paycheck, but the realization that effort had become irrelevant. All those years of stepping up, taking responsibility, and guiding others meant nothing once numbers took priority. The skills and loyalty that once made someone indispensable now made them expendable. It's cruel how a system can take everything, time, energy, and identity, and then cast it aside as soon as a cheaper option presents itself. The reasoning always sounds professional, but underneath it lies pure calculation. It's never about poor performance. It's about profit. It's never about fit. It's about control. It was never about the person, only about the balance sheet. The day of the firing felt like a performance. The office atmosphere was stiff, almost rehearsed, as if everyone had already practiced the silence that followed. Smiles were polite but empty, words chosen carefully to hide discomfort. The manager sat across the desk, pretending to feel empathy, but the truth showed in the eyes. This was just another task to complete. You've been an incredible asset, they said, but we're restructuring. That word, restructuring, carried no real meaning other than loss. It was a shield to protect those who made the decision from the guilt of it. And when they smiled and said, "You'll land on your feet, you're talented," it almost sounded like a favor, like they were offering a gift instead of taking something away. Leaving that office for the last time was heavier than expected. The same hallways once filled with pride and purpose now felt foreign and cold. Every familiar face turned into a stranger, every goodbye forced and awkward. The people who once sought advice avoided eye contact, afraid of guilt or association. That final moment, walking out the door while others watched in silence, revealed everything about the kind of loyalty that exists in business. It's only real until it becomes inconvenient. The firing wasn't personal, they said, but it felt deeply personal because it proved just how little all those years had truly meant. Walking out of the building for the last time, carrying everything that once represented years of dedication inside a small cardboard box felt unreal. The sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway like a reminder of everything left behind. Inside that box were small things, a framed photo, a mug, a few certificates, and memories of moments that had once meant something. Each item told a story of late nights, deadlines met, and countless efforts to build something meaningful. It was strange how everything that once filled an office with purpose could now fit into a single box. The weight wasn't heavy in the hands, but it pressed hard on the heart. Every step toward the exit felt like leaving behind not just a job, but a part of identity that had been built over years of faith in the wrong people. The air outside felt different, colder, quieter, and somehow emptier. After years of giving everything to one place, walking away felt like stepping into a world that no longer recognized the person who had spent nearly 2 decades behind those walls. The moment the door closed for the last time, the reality of being replaced, forgotten, and dismissed settled in completely. There was no grand farewell, no genuine appreciation, just a clean cut. It was over. The building still stood tall, filled with new faces and new stories, but it would never again hold the same meaning. That walk away marked the end of one chapter that had once seemed endless. The hardest part came not from losing the job, but from realizing how silence can wound more deeply than words ever could. In the days that followed, the silence from the people once called friends was louder than any goodbye could have been. Those who used to laugh in the break room, share coffee during long shifts, or whisper frustrations about work now vanished into quiet distance. No messages came through. No one reached out to ask how things were going or to say they were sorry. They stayed quiet, out of fear, self-preservation, or indifference. That silence revealed the truth about workplace relationships. They were never built on friendship, only convenience. The ones who used to lean for help suddenly pretended not to notice the loss. Some avoided eye contact in public. Others offered half-hearted smiles that said more than words ever could. It became clear that people only stand beside you when you hold power or position. Once that is gone, so is their loyalty. The silence was its own kind of betrayal, sharper than the firing itself. It wasn't the company's decision that hurt the most, but the realization that people had chosen to stay silent rather than stand up. It showed how fragile connections can be when built inside a place driven by fear and ambition. The absence of words became the final confirmation. The world moves on quickly, and loyalty fades faster than anyone expects. The realization came slowly but hit with the force of truth. Loyalty means nothing when money speaks louder. All those years of showing up early, staying late, solving problems others couldn't handle, and sacrificing time that could never be replaced suddenly seemed meaningless. Every promise made about dedication, being rewarded, turned out to be just words meant to keep people working harder. In the end, no one cared about effort or loyalty. They cared about numbers, results, and cost. The people in charge didn't see faces anymore, only figures on a spreadsheet. The same loyalty that once made someone dependable became a liability once profits were threatened. The system had no room for loyalty because loyalty doesn't pay dividends. It was an unspoken lesson that hit hard. Hard work builds companies, but it doesn't guarantee security. What truly mattered was who cost the least, not who gave the most. For years, it was easy to believe that being dependable meant being safe. Every extra hour worked, every crisis fixed, every idea shared came from a place of pride. But the firing stripped away that illusion completely. It showed that dedication had no power against greed. Loyalty, no matter how deep, was invisible in a place that measured worth in dollars. It wasn't personal to them, it was just business. But to the one left behind, it was deeply personal. The shock wasn't only in losing the job, but in realizing that all those years of commitment meant nothing once the balance sheet demanded sacrifice. That truth stayed like a scar, a quiet reminder of how disposable even the most loyal worker could become. But even as that pain settled in, something began to shift. There was a moment when the story stopped being about loss and started being about what comes next. The end of one chapter became the beginning of another. The part where strength grows from betrayal. The words, "It's just business," stopped sounding like an excuse and started sounding like motivation. The plan was never revenge through anger. It was about proving worth outside of the system that failed to see it. Every lesson learned in those 17 years became fuel for something new. The skills that once built success for someone else could now build something better, something personal, something untouchable. The next move was quiet, but intentional. There was no announcement, no confrontation, just focus. Sometimes the best kind of revenge doesn't come from shouting or fighting back, but from rising higher in silence. The next Monday was already being planned, not just another day, but the start of something different. The same determination that once built a career for someone else would now be used to create freedom. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving that being replaced didn't mean being defeated. The end they created had only opened the door to a new beginning. It's one where the story no longer belonged to them. Revenge doesn't always come with anger. Sometimes it comes with quiet persistence, with the calm decision to rebuild rather than destroy. After the pain faded and the shock settled, a strange kind of strength began to take its place. There was no need to shout, no reason to prove anything to those who didn't care. The best kind of payback was success itself, the kind built slowly, carefully, and on one's own terms. What was once seen as a loss started to look like freedom. There was no longer a need to answer to anyone, no pressure to conform, no fear of being replaced. The world beyond that company was bigger than it had ever seemed before. Every skill that had once been used to make someone else's business grow could now be turned inward towards something personal, something meaningful. The years of experience weren't wasted. They had simply been training for independence. The motivation that came from betrayal was different from any other kind. It wasn't fiery or loud. It was steady, focused, and deeply determined. Each morning started earlier, each decision made with purpose. The same discipline that once served a system that didn't care was now fueling something far more powerful. The memories of the firing, the humiliation, the silence from coworkers, all of it became fuel, not pain. Success would not be built out of spite, but out of strength. There was no desire to see them fail, only a quiet certainty that they would one day see what they lost. The most satisfying kind of revenge is to thrive in a world that counted you out. And that's what made next Monday so important. It wasn't just another day. It was the turning point. The day when the first steps toward a new life would begin. While the company carried on with new faces and cheaper replacements, the one they dismissed was preparing for something they could never take away: independence and purpose. So the same Monday they expected to move on without consequence would become the start of their biggest regret. Not because of confrontation or revenge, but because success has a way of echoing louder than bitterness. The same hands that once built their foundation were now building something stronger elsewhere. Next Monday would be fun, not because of payback, but because of freedom. The satisfaction came from knowing that they had underestimated the wrong person. They thought the story ended the day they handed over that termination letter, but it was only the beginning. The lesson was simple yet powerful. Never give all your strength to a place that wouldn't blink before taking it away. Success after betrayal tastes different. It carries quiet victory, peace, and self-respect. And as the world kept turning, the same company that once called someone expendable would eventually hear about their success. And that silence, that realization, would be louder than any revenge could ever be. 17 years of loyalty ended with a single decision, but the story didn't end in defeat. It became a reminder that sometimes losing everything is what forces you to finally find yourself. The years of commitment, the silent sacrifices, and the endless hours once given to someone else's dream transformed into the foundation for something greater. It's easy to believe that loyalty guarantees safety, but the truth is, it only guarantees lessons. When everything familiar was taken away, it revealed the strength that had always been there, the kind that doesn't rely on titles, paychecks, or validation. The betrayal that once cut deep became the push needed to rise again. It showed that endings aren't always punishment, sometimes they're redirections. Being replaced was painful, but it also opened a door to freedom, to creation, to peace. Every loss carried a purpose: to teach the value of self-worth, to remind that no one's loyalty should ever cost their dignity. What began as heartbreak turned into power. The silence from others, the rejection, and the dismissal became fuel to build something unshakable. The story proves that success built after betrayal hits differently. It carries pride, calm, and quiet victory. It isn't about revenge or proving others wrong anymore. It's about finally living right. Next Monday wasn't just another day at work. It was the beginning of freedom, a turning point where pain became purpose. And that's the beauty of falling apart. Sometimes it's the only way to rebuild into something stronger, wiser, and unstoppable.